Alright. Okay, we've got this game remade, so I'm going back into it right now. And here we go. And this has completely changed the scenario here, actually, which is a very, very odd thing indeed. But I bring you, once again, Roots Yu-Gi-Oh!, who is now in the red trunks because they can't keep the same damn colors. And he is playing Zerg to the southeast now of Whirlwind versus his opponent, who is now in a closer ground position rather than cross. That is Axiom's Heart. He is in the blue trunks playing Terran to the northeast. Okay. Let's see how this goes then. So, Heart is a pretty cool choice for this. Hart had to battle through a lot of players to actually make his way into WCSNA. He's a great player. He took a pretty early fall. He was actually the one taking the earliest fall into the lower bracket, having run up against a difficult opponent. Ran into Koreans pretty early, and then he was able to make his way through the lower bracket. Hart's a really good player. I think a lot of people underestimate him. He is a guy that a lot of people assume is very much a cheesy player, which is not really the case. He used to be, certainly. But he's capable of playing these just big macro games now. Yu-Gi-Oh!, on the other hand, he's just a monster. Like, he is a destructive, evil Zerg. And he is really, really good at dealing with anything you can throw at him. I don't think he really has a bad matchup at this stage. I really don't. He dealt really well with the Skytoss style of Alicia, which is historically a very difficult style to beat. Want to see Command Center first here from Hart. This is very much in keeping, one, with the map, and two, with Hart's current playstyle, where he's like, I could cheese, no, CC first, lol. And that is actually a nasty style to play against, because you just can't be sure. Hart's got this reputation for cheesy builds, and yet he doesn't necessarily do them. Every time I see Hart put out in the GSTL, I always hear Kaldor and Wolf say, I wonder what cheese he's got planned. You know, all credit to them, they say he's actually been playing a macro style lately, but he has that reputation, and that's always something you've got to think about. And Yu-Gi-Oh! Knows that. He is well aware. But this doesn't really mean that Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not going to be able to handle what's coming at him. CC first is definitely good for the Terran player, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Is not really going to be aggressive in this situation, so it's a small gamble by Hart, but it's absolutely fine. Does build it on the higher ground, just wants to make sure that he's walled off, because the worst thing that happens here is you go CC first on the low ground, the guy builds 6 lings, scouts you first, and then just kills you. It's going to be a pretty slow scout here from Yu-Gi-Oh! He's actually going to see an SCV come out, but he doesn't know whether or not that's actually a scouting SCV that was looking in that area, and in fact his opponent might be here instead, or here. He can't be 100% certain of that. He has to make an assumption, really, and he's now moving into a position simply because you can't just have your Overlord wandering around that area. A Marine will kill it otherwise. Now he certainly knows where he is. Marine's going to move into position, and it's not going to intercept that Overlord, doesn't actually see it. Can't kill it anyway, unless, of course, you were to lift up a building. We're going to immediately see a factory to follow this one up here from Hart. He is only on a single gas right now. Interesting to see what he decides to turn that into. A couple of lings on the field here for Yu-Gi-Oh! No overcommitment, which I always like to see. He is going to be going in a very much an economic kind of build. Not economical. That's actually not the same thing at all. I hear a lot of people say it's an economical build. It's actually not. Economical generally means that you are trying to save as much as you can. Economic, on the other hand, an economically focused build, that's a different matter entirely. Another CC. Greedy, greedy build. Here's the third coming down here from Yu-Gi-Oh! So, Yu-Gi-Oh! Not really in a position to apply too much pressure, so going for this third CC can work out. Hart is playing a little bit risky. He's going to basically rely on Hellions to keep map control and keep his base safe, because with the third CC, he has no production, and he really has no tech. Yeah? He only has that one gas, which was enough to get this running and get the reactor up. He may then add a tech lab and start to build units. But if Yu-Gi-Oh! Suddenly decides to turn on the pressure, then he can be in a lot of trouble. Now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Of course, is not showing any signs of building a Baneling Nest or any kind of early Roach Warren. He's now taking a second gas here. We'll see if he decides to go up to Lair and maybe just play a kind of Mutalisk heavy style. He might do that. He could play Roach Hydra, that's pretty effective too. Interestingly, Pneumaticized Carapace coming out pretty early here from Yu-Gi-Oh! It's a great scouting option. I mean, I absolutely love that he's doing it. It's going to give him some really great options there. This wall-off means that there's really no way Lings can do anything with no Baneling Nest or Roach Warren on the field. There is actually physically no way that he can attack. But he has to build a lot of Lings anyway, because he does see the Hellions coming up. What would be really cool for Hart, actually, is if he just stopped building Hellions and actually focused on different kind of production. Because with this many Lings out, these Hellions could end up getting shut down pretty hard without actually doing anything. Does need to, of course, scout the third base, but he should know by this point that there's a Zerg third. Any Zerg's going to have built a third by this point. There's no real option because you know your opponent's going early CC. Engineering Bay coming up. Obviously, tech is delayed because of this build, but if he gets those 3 command centers down, then he's going to be an economic powerhouse going into this game. Double Energy Bay going down again because you got the gas for it. Building Widow Mines defensively. Double Evo Chamber coming down from here from Yu-Gi-Oh! That's actually delay. There we go. He's going to go for lair right now to say, that's delaying the lair, and suddenly he builds a lair. But there you go. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit croaky here. Hart's going to have a look around and see what he can see. He scouts, and he spots the third. Yu-Gi-Oh! Does have enough lings to kill this, but it's pretty dodgy. His Overlord's going to scout absolutely everything. That's the wonderful thing about Pneumaticized Carapace. I love that upgrade. I think it's absolutely fantastic. I think more Zergs should build it. And Yu-Gi-Oh's got a lot of information now. Doesn't actually know about the third base, funnily enough. He actually hasn't spotted that yet. The Widow Mine moving into position as well. Overlord could very easily move there. I think, honestly, at this stage, Hart needs to build a Viking to deal with these scouts. Even then, it's not going to be fast enough. Hellions sort of menace. They haven't really done anything yet, so building those 6 Hellions really doesn't do anything. I mean, I suppose it forces some lings out of Yu-Gi-Oh! And he's actually currently sitting on 25, so maybe that helps, but this is a great spot for Hart to be in right now. On 3 bases, currently not being attacked at all. The thing is that once his opponent realizes, and he's going to realize right now, this may trigger Yu-Gi-Oh! Just to go and actually attack the third. There aren't really enough Widow Mines necessarily to stop this unless Yu-Gi-Oh! Gets really unlucky and blunders right into them, which is probably not going to happen. Infestation Pit coming down pretty early here, and Spire. I like that a lot. Against the 3-base Terran, the Spire is a very valid way of playing. The simple reason being it's very hard to defend 3 bases. Of course, it can still die to Widow Mines, so that's a possibility there, but this could be dangerous for Hart. He may have got... I wouldn't say he got too greedy, because any Zerg's really going to do this. They're going to put a Spire down because they see a third base, like, yeah, sure, I'll build a Spire. Absolutely, that's the right option here, because I can just harass and it's very hard to defend. But Hart could get punished for it. Currently, his opponent Yu-Gi-Oh! Is on 70 drones. He hasn't built that many units. He's only got 25 lings. But he does have the ability to power out units when he needs to. And with the Mutalisks on the field, it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for Hart to actually attack. There's also that is a 10-minute 30 high from Yu-Gi-Oh! Hugely fast. Crazy fast. 2 reasons for that. Either you do it for Ultras, or of course you do it for Broodlords. You can throw Vipers in the mix there as well. I'd say, well, that's great against the composition, but actually he doesn't have a composition. He's like got 10 Widow Mines, and he's got 19 Marines, 2 Medevacs, and 6 Hellions, which is enough to hold any kind of ground aggression here, I feel. But it's this tech build that might catch him off guard. What is it, 4? It could be for either Broodlords or for Ultralisks. It's hard to say. Upgrades-wise, it's currently 1-1 in terms of melee, and that just makes me think it's Broodlords, you know? But it could just be to add a couple of Vipers into the mix. The reason I think it's Broodlords and not Ultralisks is because with only 1-1 done and 2-2 only just starting, if you start building Ultralisks right now, they're not going to be that strong. And you're going to be in a gas problem where you can't build all that many Ultras, and then that's easy to kind of kill with just a bunch of Marauders. Even Marines is pretty good there too. Mutas are successfully thrown back without doing any damage there. There's plenty of Marines there for Hart as well. Hart is also trying to push the creep spread back and start to be super annoying with all of these Widow Mines. There's actually no Overseer on the field, so this could end up being really, really nasty. Yeah, this is really, really good push coming in here. Let's see. Oh, never mind. There is an Overseer. I actually misread that completely. There we go. Banelings on the field. No speed, though. So, not that dangerous against that Hellion Mine composition. Mines shut this down pretty hard. There we go. It is Broodlords. Yeah, it made logical sense. Obviously, you can transition through to Ultras as well, but getting Broodlords out at this stage is a pretty good idea. You get a few Corruptors to shut down drop potential, and then you start to build Broodlords, and suddenly Hart ends up in a really horrible spot because he doesn't have any Vikings. So, yeah, that can work, definitely. Drop coming in here from Hart is going to move around the side. Currently, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is sort of contained, and the Terran is just sitting happily on 3 bases, taking away. And there's been no harassment coming in here from Yu-Gi-Oh! Either, so it's a good spot for the Terran to be in. He's very close to being maxed out, and there's not going to be that many Broodlords coming in from Yu-Gi-Oh! There's going to be like 4, yeah? And that's nasty. Broodlords are really, really good, but are they that good? Probably not. Not against the number of units that Hart has. Hart's about to have 2-2, so his upgrades are going to be slightly ahead of his Zerg opponent. He is going to be going against Baneling speed. Building 14 drones right now, I think, was actually a huge mistake. Heart's going in for the engagement there. The Widow Mines didn't really pop on anything useful. I think he's just relying on spines and a lot of static defense here. Building 14 drones, though, that was kind of the worst time for that to happen. There's actually a very small army here from Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh!, however, has elected to build a lot of static defense, and Heart is a little bit slow to respond to that. He is able to drop in a good position, so he will be able to kill several units, especially with 2-2. So the response time from Yu-Gi-Oh! Here is relatively slow. That forces his opponent away. He's going to try and kill some static defense, but he's not going to be able to take that down. He's now focusing just on the queens and taking out as many drones as he can. And a little bit of slow response time here from Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually, because he's being dropped all over the place. Big drop into the main base, an attack on the third, and an attack going... Oh my god! The Widow Mines kill Heart's army! That was horrible! And this is why Widow Mines are not guaranteed kills. Heart loses the majority of his attacking force thanks to Widow Mines, and Heart's offensive is suddenly completely shut down thanks to his own Widow Mines. That was horrible. And the thing is about Broodlords that... Broodlords, and I know this sounds weird, are a counter to Widow Mines. You're like, what? Why? Why are they a counter to Widow Mines? Because of Broodlings. Broodlings are so dangerous against Widow Mines. They force Widow Mines to fire at the biocomposition on the ground. It shuts it down really well. Of course, the other possibility is that Heart's able to get Drilling Claws out and actually get those mines beneath him. But Heart just lost a huge army there, and he didn't really do that much economic damage. I say that much, he killed 24 workers, but even then, his opponent had so many anyway. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is such a big economically focused player. Now Heart's got to go for a second push. He does have Drilling Claws here, but against Broodlords, again, these mines aren't going to do anything. I would actually have to see a mine drop here. You know, that would be so cool. If he picked up some mines, dropped them directly below the Broodlords, that would actually be a really good way of dealing with them. They're probably not fast enough to get away from that. But right now, drop-wise, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is pretty safe. He's got a lot of static defense. Huge amounts of it. There's like a wall of spines here, and lots of Spore Crawlers going behind it as well. So drops are going to be very difficult to actually use effectively here. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, bear in mind, on 4 bases. He is mined out of his main, almost, but he's still mining from 3 active mining bases. Heart, on the other hand, is looking pretty good at his natural, but is getting mined out at his main, so he's only going to be on 2. So we're going to have to see a good engagement here from Heart, but a great fungal here from Yu-Gi-Oh! Actually locks down a lot of those mines. Great play here. Got to be so careful. Oh, you can't use mines against Broodlords. You can't do it. This is why. You just cannot safely use them. The only approach I think you've got here is to actually drop them underneath the Broodlords. Because otherwise, Heart is actually going to lose this engagement. In fact, that's exactly what's happening. Big drop comes in again. Heart's going to be able to borrow a huge amount of Widow Mines and go right into the main base. Needs to kill that Spore Crawler before he loses that Medivac. He's able to do that quite nicely. And the thing about Yu-Gi-Oh! Is that he can still get pulled apart by big, well-upgraded drops. 3-3 is coming in here as well. So some damage has been taken, but Heart is not really doing a huge amount of damage to the economy of his opponent here. This Medivac is probably going to die. Actually, it pulls back. So what Heart is doing right now is he is building Ravens, which is a really interesting move. The mines aren't really going to do anything. He needs to actually move the mines back and use them defensively, not offensively, because they're just a liability. A couple of Widow Mines end up being deployed here, which is going to be a little bit annoying, certainly. In fact, that's going to be a lot annoying. There's like 5 Widow Mines in the main base. This is probably the best way to use the Widow Mines, actually. And we're going to see some dead Banelings there by the looks of it. Yeah, that's the best way to use them. Just drop them into the main base and just let them kill reinforcements. Well, there's a few Vikings donated for free. But Yu-Gi-Oh! Is still in a really good spot now. He's actually in a very good spot. Heart's actually forced away. This 4th base doesn't go down. There are not enough Vikings on the field to really kill these Broodlords, especially since he just donated a bunch of them. He's building Ravens to try and handle it, which can work, but with the Overseers in position, these Widow Mines actually aren't going to be good on the defense at all. And there's the GG. Heart gives up completely. Yu-Gi-Oh! With a great build completely shuts that down. And Heart went for the Mass Widow Mine, which, as it turns out, is really bad against the 10.5-minute Hive. Who knew, right? Yu-Gi-Oh! Crazy good. Alright, who does Axiom send out next? We will find out very shortly, folks. Maybe they send Ryung out, but I think Crank. I think Crank is a good option right now, because then if you lose Crank, then you can just bring Ryung out a couple of times to try and finish off Yu-Gi-Oh!, who is most likely going to end up being the ace, but they can still switch out for Sage again. So, Root is now in a much better position. They're now 3-2. Still behind, but not by much. Yu-Gi-Oh! Showing his skill here with some great builds. We'll be back very shortly to see whether or not he can even up the score. Alright, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we're going to the next matchup right here. We might have to regame. No, it doesn't look like we will. Apparently we lost someone in the process, but either they weren't that important or it just bugged out, so never mind. Okay, we're going into this game, right? Oh, we lost cats. Okay, that's actually fine. We should be able to continue. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome here to Newkirk. And we're going to see a Terran vs. Zerg Newkirk. This could take a while. This man, Root Yu-Gi-Oh, is showing amazing skill and builds in this tournament. Good God. So cool. I love the idea of being able to use Broodlords against Mass Widowmine. That's a fantastic idea. As we saw for Hart, it actually completely murdered him. Hart was caught utterly off guard and was not able to transition against that at all. So Yu-Gi-Oh! Putting 2 on the board here for his team. He is in the red trunks and he is playing Zerg to the southeast. Looking to equalize it 3 for 3 here in this Axiom versus Root battle. Versus his opponent, it is Axiom Ryung. He is in the blue trunks and he is playing Terran to the southwest. Ryung's a really good choice here for obvious reasons. We're going to see CC first on the low ground. You greedy, greedy man. Seriously greedy. CC first on the low ground. But of course, Yu-Gi-Oh! Did go hatch first, so even if Yu-Gi-Oh! Goes pool right now, it's actually very unlikely that it can do damage. He's actually going to pool on 17 because he knows, right, I can't do damage here. He's pooling on 18. Uh-oh. The other 18 pool is really crazy, crazy. There's one other possibility here. Yeah, exactly. There we go. I was going to say, he's going to go 3 hatch before pool. There we go. That. You want to see greedy? Yeah. Yu-Gi-Oh! Just took it up another notch. 3 hatch before pool is a build that, you know, 6 months to maybe a year ago, people would have said, that's insane, you can't do that. But you can. You actually can. Very much so. It's a great build. Very, very potent. Question is, does Ryung scout it? Does Ryung smell it? And can Ryung actually do anything about it? Like, CC first on low ground, 3 hatch before pool is a great response. But it is, of course, very, very dangerous. Depends what Ryung decides to do after this. I imagine he's just going to go for a very economically focused build. He may decide to do drop play. Ryung in this matchup is a bit of an enigma because he still uses a very old style at times. He will still use tanks, which almost no one else is using. But there are situations where you definitely want to be using tanks instead of Widowmines, like the last game. To be fair, I don't think that would have even helped there because the Broodlords would have still taken them out. There wasn't actually enough there, and the transition wasn't properly read by Hart. Admittedly, it was a 10.5-minute hive, which is, I think, the earliest I've ever seen in StarCraft 2. So he was caught completely off guard by that. He was not expecting that at all. Usually the hive comes down at maybe 12 to 12:30. But yeah, it was just nuts. It's a great build. Love it. Factory coming down, and we are seeing a reactor coming in as well. Reactor's a little bit late for a swap around, but that doesn't really mean anything. You can still see the swap around. It's going to be the 3cc build here from Ryung, which of course we saw from Hart as well. But I think this 3 hatch before pool method that Yu-Gi-Oh! Played is actually a really great way to deal with this. Hellions are obviously going to be a threat, especially on this third base. Stopping them is going to be difficult, but not impossible. It may even force Yu-Gi-Oh! To actually build static defense. Double gas coming down here for Yu-Gi-Oh! So we're not going to see any speed for a little while. And we're actually going to see, I think, Hellions coming out right about now. So this is going to be pretty gnarly to stop. And there's the Roach Warren coming down to do that. The problem with the Roach Warren is you've got 3 hatcheries. You have to defend all of this stuff. How do you do that? So it's difficult. You can take a lot of damage here from Hellion run-bys. Even with queens, I mean, he's going to get 4 queens here. Maybe he gets even more than that. It's still difficult to defend if a lot of Hellions come at you. We will see. Let's see what Ryung decides to do here. I'll probably try and poke at the third base, which is, I imagine, where the Roach defenses will probably be concentrated, but you never know. You might want to keep the Roaches back, because otherwise the Hellions just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to run right into the main then. Yeah, good luck dealing with that. Roaches aren't ready yet. A couple of links spot the Hellions coming out here. 2 more Hellions coming out. So, again, there's not really a lot on the field here for Ryung, and there's 4 Roaches being put out. I wonder if Ryung actually just stops building Hellions now and just goes into beastie macro mode. Because if he keeps building Hellions against Roaches, then it ends up being less and less cost-efficient the more he does it. So, it's not really the best way to do things, especially since you also don't get the ability to build Widowmines until later on either. Alright, there's the Queens. They're in good position with the Roaches as well. I mean, in this scenario, Ryung should really just hit the natural. And he might actually be able to catch a drone transfer, but he'll take a lot of damage if he does. He is not going to lose a... Yeah, he is going to lose a Hellion there. So Ryung makes his way into the main base, and now it is, of course, up to Yu-Gi-Oh! Not to take a huge amount of damage from this. Let's see how good the control is. The first shot goes off Roast's 1 drone. Ryung looking to try and line him up here. That was a good shot. Let's see if he can get another one off. He looks to get another one. He doesn't actually get the kill with it. We will find out how many kills he really got there in a second. That was, of course, with just 4 Hellions, but there was a lot more drones coming out. 30 more drones to replace that. 6 workers killed. That was worth it for 2 Hellions, definitely, but it doesn't really hold Yu-Gi-Oh! Back all that much. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was, of course, forced to build some roaches, which is not ideal here, but he is actually going up to 6 gas. 6 gas. Huge amount. With that amount of gas, it's almost certain that we will see... I don't know, the timing means that we might not see a Spire, but if you build 6 gas, you can build a Spire with only 2 up because you'll be able to catch up there. We may also see the Hydra Den. There we go. Just coming down. Hydraless Den, Roach Hydra, mid-game push. Very, very, very strong here. That could work. 4 more barracks coming down here for Ryung, who is now looking to take his 3rd base. Hydra Den is on its way here. Upgrades-wise, we've got double ups coming out for both sides. We've got a very... It's actually completely even, really. The ranged attack upgrade is ahead for the Zerg player, but the armor's behind, so that really doesn't make that much of a difference. Roach speed coming out as well, so... There's the Hydra speed. So yeah, Roach Hydra composition. Yeah, it's pretty good. There is a concern, of course, of it dying to Widow Mines, because Roaches have to bunch up really, really close, but with an Overseer in play, Widow Mines are quite easy to deal with. There is also the potential risk of drop play behind it for that big backstab. Armory coming up here for the upgrades, 4 reactors being added on. Now, he's not really at any risk of dying to a timing in, I would say, the next minute or so, because Muscular Augment isn't dealt with. We can still, he can still push Roaches towards the 3rd base and actually force a lift here, I feel, because there's actually very little on the field here for Ryung. He's got a lot of Widow Mines, but they don't kill Roaches all that quickly, and you could just send in 1 Roach at a time, micro it properly, and then just send the rest in, so... At the moment, though, Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't looking like he wants to be aggressive. He wants to build that Hydra Force up first. He wants to finish +1/+1, and then he hits. And if he actually hits at that timing, it could hurt a lot. It depends on, I think, how effective these Widow Mines end up being as either a deterrent or as actual doing real damage. There's going to be more Hydralisks than there is Marines here. We're going to have to see a lot of units coming out from Ryung. He can't really afford to slack on that. He must build more units. He needs to stop building everything else, really. It looks like he wants to go to 2-2, which is unfortunately slowing down his ability to get upgrades. Stim goes forward here. I said upgrades. I'm an idiot. Sorry, I've had like 3 hours sleep, so I'm a bit of a mess in this particular cast. This mid-game push from Yu-Gi-Oh! Is going to be really, really strong, though. And the unit count is not that high for Ryung. It's going to be a bit dangerous. There's only 2 medevacs on the field. There will be 2 more by the time that this actually hits. And unfortunately, I think the army's actually going to get cut off here. Ryung should be able to get out, but this 3rd base is going to take a lot of damage. Again, it relies on just how effective these Widow Mines really are, and if Yu-Gi-Oh! Runs right into them, which he shouldn't. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has proven that he is absolutely up to the task of dealing with mines up to this point, and of course, with no drilling claws, he needs to be careful to engage here. That is a nice move by Yu-Gi-Oh! To push his Roaches right to the front there to try and deal with this. The Hydra count is really, really high here, so I think, honestly, Yu-Gi-Oh! Should be able to break this. In fact, he completely destroys it, and this 3rd base is dead, and there's no question about it. Yu-Gi-Oh!'s Hydra timing was absolutely perfect. Ryung was not able to deal with that at all. Widow Mine's now trying to deploy to defend against it, but he lost a lot of workers there. Ryung will be able to eventually push this back, I feel, especially with 2-2 on the way, building 8 Marines at a time, but this is going to be a tricky engagement. He lost a lot of workers there. 15 workers killed by Yu-Gi-Oh! That strike was very, very dangerous, and we're seeing Hive come behind this as well. Really nice moves coming in from Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is so ridiculous right now, it's not even funny. He is so good! My god. Now, let's see if Ryung can actually hold up against this. He's got more medevacs in the field right now, so he should be able to. There's Roaches at the front, but not a huge amount. There comes in another lift, so denying mining. Yu-Gi-Oh! Must be really happy with that, considering he's taken a 4th base behind that, and he's actually got it up and running. Yu-Gi-Oh! Is actually, in my opinion, one of the scariest Zergs I've ever seen right now. He is playing an amazing style. And Ryung is not able to drop, he's not able to harass, which is the real strength of Terran right there. And the late game transition is coming in from the Zerg player. So, can Ryung actually kill this army? And there goes the Widow Mine. It's actually killed before it's able to do anything. There's one going off, but it hits a Roach, not the